Hello everybody, this is me, Amin.
This is Alex.
And welcome to another episode of Let's Talk About. And in this episode, we're going to talk about EV charging
Curve?
Yes. What is that? Okay, so we noticed that one of the biggest questions that people have misunderstanding that people have about EV charging is this thing called EV charging curve. So what is it? Why is it important? How does it affect your charging? And which car has the best EV charging curve? So I think charging is something that people seem to have a misconception. I know a lot of StorageInJao.com readers and listeners to the podcast are very technology inclined and they understand technology. They can understand new technology very easily. And to them, it's pretty straightforward. But to a lot of people, I mean, we see on social media and people who've been talking to us, asking us questions, even technical people, they seem to have a straightforward understanding of charging. Because, you charge your phone, you just plug it into a 3-point and then you chocho your cable and the phone is charging and you wait for a couple of hours, it's done. For EVs and for cars in general, it's a bit more different. Number one, you can't plug it into you can plug it into a 3-pin socket, but it's going to take days to charge. Number two, when you plug it into a charger, not the same. Different cars will charge at different rates, especially if you're using DC. So today we're going to probably maybe break it down, have a good discussion, and probably answer all the questions about EV charging curve. Okay, maybe we'll start with question number one. What in the world is an EV charging curve?
I think this is applicable for most of the battery-powered devices that uses fast charging, similar to smartphones, right? So initially, last time we have the standard charging like 5 watts, 10 watts. The charging rate is consistent. So let's say, for example, it takes 10 minutes to get 10% charge. It's going to be the same thing. You charge all the way until 100%. But with the evolution of fast charging, because we have high voltage or high ampere implementation, there is a need to regulate the charging. And like, for example, that's the reason why if you look at smartphones, right, a lot of them, they claim that, okay, with this super fast charger, you can get from like 0 to 50% or 0 to 80% in X number of minutes. And they never mention 100%. And the reason for that is because they need to manage the thermals and the battery health and all that to ensure that it does not overload, like there's no over voltage, over current to the battery.
Yep.
So that's why there's limitation. So essentially, when you do fast charging, EVs or smartphones is always the fastest to charge from zero until like 50%. Then it starts to taper down because in the last few percentage, right, it's going to get super slow. So you can think of it like filling up a theater with audience. So when you open the doors to the hall, people will rush to the seats. So it's very fast to fill up the first few seats, maybe up to 50%. Then after that, it starts to slow down. Similar to airplanes as well. So if you first board the plane, it's easy to get to your seat. And then the more to fill up the final few passengers or audience to the theater, it's going to be challenging because you need to squeeze in, okay, where's the available seat. So the same concept applies to battery technology for fast charging for smartphones, tablets, and also for EVs. And we also mentioned that different cars have different implementation because
Different charging curves. Yep.
Because if you look at EVs, you look at the specs, right? You can see a lot of EVs have different maximum output. So some could be like as low as 50 kilowatts, some could be 100 kilowatts, some could be 275 kilowatts. And of course, I think the question we always ask is, hey, how come this EV says can do like 200 kilowatts, but when I plug in, I'm not getting 200 kilowatts. I'm getting less. Am I getting ripped off? Is it the problem with my car? Is it the problem with the charger? What's going on? So there's a lot of these questions.
Yep. I think the analogy about putting people in a theater is great because that's exactly how electrons behave, right? So when you have an empty plane, for example, the people can just walk in really quickly and sit down and settle down really quickly. It gets difficult when you have to shuffle around and they are not arranged in order. And electrons are the same. You can't arrange them in order. You can't put them neatly in order when you're charging. So, and that's the reason why there's a charging curve, because the fuller the battery gets, the more difficult for you to squeeze in the electrons. And you got to manage that because if the power that you put in is the same, the battery might overheat and it might degrade the battery. I think the other thing that we need to talk about is battery has like a degradation cycle to it. And I think a lot of people are trying to understand, okay, how do I take care of my battery? So this show is about charging curve and not about battery. So maybe we'll not go into detail, but it's suffice to say that if you have a battery, any lithium ion, lithium polymer, or lithium battery, it's good to keep it not so hot. So I think the maximum for EVs, for example, is around 50 below 60, 80 degrees Celsius. That's like the nominal. The hotter it is, the more damaging it is for the battery. The other thing is we try to not charge fast charge cars as often as people would like. So that's another discussion altogether. With regards to charging curve, is because of the battery capacity, how the car itself manages the battery, and the technology that the battery has. I think for people to better understand, right, can you maybe explain what is amps and volts? Because I think we'll have a lot of talk about that as we move along this discussion about EV charging curves.
Yeah. So amps and volts. So basically, you see the rates like kilowatt, right? Watts, right? So the mathematical formula is volt multiplied by amp equals the output watts.
Power.
Power. So basically, volt is basically like the pressure. Let's imagine like a water tank, right? So the huge tank, you put high up, right? Higher the volt is higher pressure, and the amps actually the flow of the water, how fast it flow. So if you want to fast charge, there are two ways doing it: increase the volt or increase the amp. These are the two methods.
You can do it together, right? You can. So is it possible to increase the volt and amps, or you just only do one thing at a time?
It depends on architecture. It depends on architecture. So like for batteries, right? The volts is fixed based on how you manufacture the battery. So the battery could be 400 volts or 800 volts.
Yep.
So let's say you get a 400 volt architecture cars, like most of EVs are based on 400 volts. You want to fast charge, you need to increase the amps. So increase amps similar to smartphones. The higher amps you increase, it gets actually hotter. It's actually warmer. So warmer also leads to battery energy loss as well. So another alternative to that is instead of increasing the amp, you can increase the volts by having a bigger volt battery. Like for example, most of the high-end cars that has an 800 volt architecture battery. So with higher volt battery, you don't need to increase amp so much. So that means it's much cooler, it's more efficient. There's less energy loss.
So the optimal configuration is to have a high voltage architecture battery, so that you can fill up the battery with lower amps.
Yes.
And that kind of reduces losses in terms of heat generated and also protects the battery in the long run. So generally, higher voltage architecture is better than a lower voltage architecture. And we talked about charging curve, right? So I don't know whether we've answered this question. Why is it important to have a charging curve?
Number one is to essentially to protect the battery, because like normally when you start charging from a low state of health, like basically the lower
when the hall is empty.
Yes, you can actually cram as much as possible. But as you go up, it gets it's going to get more complicated. It's going to be hotter. So to prevent like battery degradation, they need to start lowering the amps down to reduce the speed as well, so that it's cooler. And most EVs these days it comes with like a built-in fan to cool down the batteries. So as you charge using like a fast charging solution, eventually your fans start kicking in because you need to cool down the batteries to ensure that it's at optimal temperatures. And certain vehicles, like especially for Korean EVs, they always say that it does like the Korean siesta. Sometimes if you just stop charging high speed, just drop significantly, let it cool down for a while, then you continue charging. And that's all to protect the battery, essentially.
Okay, so the reason why it's called a charging curve is because if you go to a charger, if you're charging an EV via DC, so charging curve only applies for DC charging. That's fast charging, and I guess it only applies if you're like charging beyond 20 kilowatts. I mean, we tried because we tried charging a car using DC. So like my EV6, for example, we plugged it into a DC charger. It was a 40 kilowatt DC charger, but it was shared with another car, so it could only supply 20 kilowatts. And we noticed that the fan didn't turn on. The car was charging fine, so not really a concern if it's around 20 kilowatts. So it depends on a lot of these things, right? It depends on the car, depends on the charger, and it depends on the battery.
Specifically, the state of charge as well.
Yeah, so if you go to a DC charger, you can either look at the app or on the display. If you tap on it, like the Cam Power chargers that we've tried, or you can see, you tap on the display, and then the charger itself will show how the charging curve looks like, and it usually starts from way at the top. So on this, on the vertical axis, it's the power. The voltage or the watts, the kilowatts, the kilowatt hour that's pushed into the car. And then on the horizontal axis is the time. So if you look at the vertical axis, it's going to start way high, because generally when you start charging at a lower battery capacity, around maybe 10% or 20%, the kilowatt is higher. And then after that, it's like we say it's a curve, but if you look at it, it's like steps lah, actually.
Yeah, it's steps. It starts to be fair, when you start charging, you don't get the maximum speed immediately. It takes time to spool up first.
Yeah, to warm up.
So maybe like, for example, if the car can support say 230, right, it might start like 30, 40, 50. You can see it keeps going up. And there's also another factor to the charging curve as well. It's also the optimal temperature. So if your battery is too cold, you might not get the optimal charger. If your battery is too hot, you also cannot get the optimal speed, because there's optimal temperature to get the fast charging speed.
Okay, so a lot of people, especially Tesla fans, right? So they come and say, "Oh, you can't get the full speed of charging because the battery needs preconditioning."
Yeah.
Does it apply in Malaysia?
Malaysia, okay, I think it depends on the battery as well. Like for example, on the Hyundai and Kias, right? I think if there's conditioning, I think it might help. Because most of the time you plug in, right, it takes about maybe like 3 to 5 minutes before you can get the full speed. So I believe that if there's preconditioning, you can probably get that way earlier, but we don't have that. But at least in Malaysia, because we are in a warmer climate, about 30 plus degrees, I think it's not a big issue. But we've seen like a couple of people who test the Tesla superchargers at Pavilion. To get the optimal speed, what they did was they set preconditioning. And one thing about Tesla, because it's all linked to ecosystem, so when you navigate to a Tesla supercharger, it automatically knows that you're going to charge, and it can precondition on the way to the charger. So by the time your car reaches the charging station, your battery is toasty enough to receive the maximum power output.
Yeah, so on some cars you can actually enable preconditioning, like you can turn it on and turn it off manually. On other cars you can turn it on, and then the car knows how to automatically set preconditioning, because you have to also understand preconditioning heats up the battery, and that uses a heater, and when that heater turns on, it uses more battery power. And preconditioning, I think the optimal battery temperature to start fast charging is about 50 degrees. And like you say, right, if you're in Malaysia, 50 degrees for a component that is running, it's not really a problem.
Yeah, it only makes more sense if you're in colder weather. Imagine you're staying in Western countries with like sub-zero temperatures, especially winter, right? You're starting from 0 degrees, 0 to like 50 degrees is a lot. So you really need to precondition way in advance. So by the time you reach charger, you can start charging at high rate.
Yeah, I know. For me, it doesn't apply in Malaysia, because like our cars have preconditioning. I don't even turn it on.
We can't turn it on. I think
like you can set to enable preconditioning, so it will turn on when the temperature says that it requires preconditioning. But I don't even turn it on. Despite not even turning it on, I can charge my car like a whole total 66, almost 67 kilowatt hour in the battery in less than 20 minutes. So I don't think, I mean, if you have a proper battery architecture, you don't really need preconditioning.
If you're staying in climate like Malaysia. Because like for Malaysia, because our weather, especially the chargers outside, right, 40 degrees to 50 degrees is 10 degrees is like, you can get that done easily. Because when you use a supercharger, right, things get really hot very quickly. So not really issue in Malaysia. If you're staying in other countries like Sweden, Norway, then you really need that.
Yeah. Okay. So the biggest question a lot of people are asking, and I see it on social media, is that why? So let's say my car. So, okay, the EV6 for example, it says 350 kilowatt hour it's 350 kilowatt DC fast charging. But when you plug it in, you only get 237 or 200, less than 300. So why am I not getting what the manufacturer is advertising?
That's like we said in the previous episode, it's a marketing gimmick by Hyundai and Kia. Because the way they say it, right, they say you can get 10 to 80% in 80 minutes when it's plugged into a 350 kilowatt charger. It doesn't say that you're going to get 350. It's when you plug into a 350 kilowatt charger.
It's in the details.
Yes, it's details. It's a marketing gimmick, which I think they should be more transparent. What they say technically is not wrong in applying 350 kilowatt because when we tested that, we tested a 350 kilowatt charger,
Yep.
but we get 237, the highest, right?
Yep.
230 to 237, so that's the maximum. So yeah, know your actual rating. So the way we found out is because we verify through multiple sources. We check charging curves that shared by other people, and then we notice, hey, yeah, it's only 230 max.
Yeah.
Similar to Porsche, because the Taycan, you can plug it, you can get high speeds when you connect to a 350 kilowatt charger, but the max you get is about 275 around there. Yeah.
The other thing also is like, okay, for example, I drive a car that can do 40 kilowatt DC maximum, right? Then I go to a charger, I plug it in, and I only get, so I go to a 40 kilowatt charger. I should theoretically get 40 kilowatts, but then I go there, right? I only get half of the speed that I'm supposed to get. Why does that happen?
That comes to several aspects. So like 40 kilowatt, I think I would say all EVs in Malaysia, DC fast charging, you can do at least 50 lah. I think 50 is bare minimum. So you're plugging to 40 kilowatt, right? You should be able to get 40. But if you get less than that, there are a few reasons. Number one, it could be depends on how the chargers are being configured, because a lot of DC chargers out there, they have like multiple nozzles. So basically, like one charger, you have two nozzles. You can charge two EVs at the same time.
It's like a petrol pump lah. You know, you have like the three nozzles for 97,
side.
95, and diesel.
Notice that, and then you got both sides.
Both sides. Yeah.
So a lot of EV chargers, what they do is they do like a fixed split. So let's say this particular charger can do 40 kilowatts, but they do a hard split. Okay, this nozzle can only do 20, the other nozzle can do 20.
So they pre-split it,
They pre-split it.
Okay.
But there are other chargers that can do dynamic power sharing. So in the sense that if there's only one car that's connected to this charger, right, they will just give you the full power available, 40 kilowatt to one car, no problem, because the other nozzles not in use. Why am I keeping 20 kilowatt idling? I just give the full capacity to you. Unless maybe another car pulls up and plug it in, then it might split. Some chargers won't even let the second car activate. So it depends on how it's being configured. And then there are another one that's more flexible, like Cam Power's dynamic power sharing. So what they do is basically it's like a pool sharing. So they have like 4 terminals which are connected to one single giant cabinet box. So that one
giant power supply. So we'll try to keep it layman. So the cabinet box, we usually call it a cabinet box. In layman's term, it's a power supply. So that unit can supply, let's say
200.
Okay, 200.
Yes.
Okay.
So you can
across four we call it satellites. Layman
pumps.
Okay, 4 pumps.
Yeah. So think of it like the petrol station, right? So you go petrol station, the cabinet or the storage is actually underground. So that one whole big pool, and up there is just dummy terminals. That's where it fills up. So similar concept. So if let's say if you come in and then they'll give you the maximum output they can provide, and if another car comes in, they will just split to others. And we, as we explained earlier, there's charging curve, right? So there's no point giving you like dedicated like 200 all the time, because you're not going to utilize 200 all the time because of the charging curve. So the higher you charge, you're going to have a lower charging rate as you go along. So once more capacity is being freed up, they can distribute that evenly or efficiently to other vehicles. So everyone will get the optimal charging curve. So that's one option.
Yeah, I want to also add like one of the DC chargers that I really like using, I don't know whether you feel the same, is Cam Power. Because it has this dynamic load sharing technology. So we come back to that example, right? So there's a power supply that can supply 200 kilowatts, and then it's split across 4 pumps, right? So 4 nozzles, for example. So theoretically, maximum each nozzle can get, because it's 4, is 50 kilowatt hours, 50 kilowatts, right? But we also have to say that there is like a buffer zone where the power storage will maybe keep 20 kilowatt, meaning that the maximum that one nozzle can get from a 200 kilowatt power supply is probably 120 or 180 or something like that. So that buffer allows the dynamic load sharing to split the power seamlessly. So that means, right, if I'm plugged into this 200 kilowatt power supply via one nozzle, and then Alex comes, so I'm getting 120 kilowatt, and then Alex comes, and then so the load sharing will split according to the demand, and the demand comes from the car, and the car decides that demand based on the charging curve. Why Alex mentioned something I think really important. The charging curve depends on there's a length of time, right? So Tesla, for example, right? So people are saying, Tesla has the fastest charging, 250 kilowatt. I think there's a big disclaimer that Tesla doesn't mention, and I think it's a great time for us to explain that disclaimer. So what is it exactly?
So like we mentioned, it's all about charging curve, right? So charging curve, there's a few things like, okay, yeah, you can get 250 kilowatts, but how long can you get that for? And based on what we've seen online, someone has tested on a Tesla supercharger in Malaysia, and also there's a lot of charging curves for Tesla Model Y, high performance. You only can get the 250 kilowatt for the first, like, I don't know how, like
Less than 5 minutes.
it's like, yeah, very short while, maybe between 10 to 15%, maybe the most 20%, and after that it starts to drop dramatically.
Yeah, and I want to add, it has to be within the battery capacity, right? So I think you get 250 kilowatts at close to zero,
Yes.
and up to
20%.
15%.
Yeah, at most 20%.
Yeah.
So you need to be like super low in battery
Yep.
in order to experience that high speed 250 kilowatts.
Yep.
Yeah.
In contrast, again, I'm not trying to be biased here. So, for example, in our EV6, I've had it at like maybe 45% or 30%. Even then, I'm getting 200 kilowatts. I can't remember, but the power flow is much higher.
It can sustain 230 up to like 50%.
Yeah, so the disclaimer is depending on your vehicle and how the battery is being managed by the vehicle, sometimes the maximum power that you can get from a fast DC charger is very short. The time duration is very short. In the example of the Tesla, for example, the Model 3 and Model Y, you can get it for just 5 minutes.
Yep.
In contrast, maybe a car. So the Model 3 and Model Y has a 400 volt battery architecture. In contrast, the EV6, the other eGMP platforms like the Ioniq 5, the Ioniq 6 has 800 volts. So they are able to sustain higher power for longer. And in overall charging time, despite Tesla claiming that they can supply 250 kilowatts, and EV6 can only get 230, less than 240 kilowatts, the EV6 battery can sustain the higher voltage for longer, meaning that the battery charging time overall is much less.
And in simple terms, right, the time it takes to charge from 10 to 80% on the eGMP platform like the Kia EV6, Hyundai Ioniq 5, Ioniq 6, it takes about 18 minutes, less than 20 minutes.
Yep.
But on the Tesla Model Y, to do the similar 10 to 80%, it will probably take you about 25 minutes to half an hour. So when you finish charging EV6, right, you can now charge on the EV6 at the same time as the Tesla Model Y.
Yeah.
So that's the difference there.
Yeah, and we're not trying to be biased because I think these two cars, the eGMP platform on the 800 volt architecture and the Tesla, have probably among the fastest charging capabilities in Malaysia.
Yeah.
Of course, there are other 800 volt cars like the Porsche, for example.
And it can go higher, 275.
But the curve is not as fast, right? It cannot sustain that high voltage longer.
Yes, you do 275 for about maybe until 30%. Then it drops to about 200 until 50%. So 275 and then drop to 200.
Yeah.
So it's at the end of the day, it's very similar to what you get from the Hyundai and Kias.
So in this respect, I guess, okay, how does this translate to daily use, right? Number one, daily use, please do not charge. I don't recommend lah. I know there are some videos that say, I've been charging on DC charging every day, not a problem. I don't know. I haven't tried that, and I just want to be safe. So I don't recommend you using DC charging every day. Number two is, if you are getting an EV, it's good for you to understand what is the maximum DC charging capability of your car. So let's say Alex says on average it's about 50 kilowatt. So then you only look for chargers that can supply 50 kilowatts. There's no point to go to a more expensive, faster charger, let's say a 350 kilowatt charger, because you're not gonna even use half of that capacity.
Yeah, and then you're paying more expensive for that because these chargers cost a lot more.
Yeah. So that's the other question, right? So one of the other comments I've been getting is that, EV charging is more expensive than petrol. I think the misconception here is that they go to
DC chargers.
To DC chargers that charge exorbitant amount of money. So my example would be like Shell. I think Okay, so if you're new to charging and you want to travel across states and you're looking for a DC charger and you find Shell, my advice is look for an alternative because Shell is the most expensive charging in Malaysia right now
Yes.
by a huge mile.
Yeah.
Because number one, they charge per minute, and just the rate itself is what, 6 ringgit,
RM4 per minute.
and it takes about 30 minutes, for example, right?
And it's a 180 kilowatt charger. So if I would say it's not so bad if you're using an Android Volt architecture, like if you drive a Porsche or Hyundai and Kia, I think it's okay because you just need like a 10-15 minute top up.
Yep.
You're good to go. Like
Yep.
$40 for a quick thing, for quick top up, I think it's fine. But if you're driving a car that can't really maximum 100 kilowatts
Yep.
and you're paying by the minute, you're
Yep.
driving like a good cat,
Like a
BYD Arrow
Dolphin.
or Dolphin. You're not getting your money's worth, man. So you might as well don't use it at all.
Yeah, so for the beginners, right? Number one, the point that we're talking about is look for chargers that charge per kilowatt. I think that's more nominal. Look for a good rate. So a good rate will be around 1 ringgit 20 cents, around 1 ringgit 60 cents.
Yep.
And most importantly, if you're charging, because of charging curve, right, and it gets slower as your battery capacity becomes fuller, don't charge beyond 90%.
80%. I would say stop 80. In fact, I would say that if you go like for long distance trips, right? I wouldn't want to wait until 80% either. For me, I'll just top up for 10 minutes and good to go. Because ultimately, I think first we need to get our head off from the old mindset of pumping petrol. Because normally if you drive a petrol car, the normal thing is, okay, I just come to petrol station, I come all the way to here, right? Might as well make it worth my while. I just pump to full.
Yeah.
But that's not the case for EV charging. For EV charging, instead of thinking about charging full, charge enough with a slight buffer to get to your next destination or the next charging point.
Yep.
Because like we mentioned, charging curve, right? The higher it goes, the slower it gets. So instead of wasting that time, right, just continue driving and charge next point. Because let me explain. In most cases, right, like for example, the Kia EV6 and Hyundai i95, 10 to 80% takes
15 minutes.
20 minutes.
Okay.
And to charge from 80 to 100%, that's another 30 minutes.
Yeah.
So why you want to wait for 30 minutes for that 20% charge?
Yep.
When you can just continue your journey,
Yep.
find next charger, and continue charging from there. Because by the time you reach the next point of charging, right, your battery percentage will be much lower, and you can get the maximum speed capable. And that's much faster. So less waiting, more driving,
Yep.
and then you have shorter charging time. So that will be the recommendation. And also, since if you're going to charge on time-based chargers, because most of the chargers along the North Side Highway, they are charged per minute. Like Jom Charge, they charge at 1 ringgit 20 cents per minute or 1 ringgit 50 cents per minute. Just charge 10-50%. Just enough for you to go for a toilet break. And that's more than enough.
Yeah. I these are really good points, man. So for those who are new to EVs, number one is understand what is your maximum DC charging capability, and then look for chargers that offer good rates. So the easiest is if you see Shell, don't go to Shell.
Unless like last resort or like really out of battery and there's no other chargers, no choice.
Emergency purposes, yes.
And even if you do, right, just charge enough to
just top it up.
Yeah, top up to go to the next charger. Don't charge the full.
Yeah.
Because I've seen a lot of people, even car reviewers, they say, EV is not worth it because they use DC charger, charge 100%, take them more than 1 hour and complain. See, it cost me like 200 ringgit to charge a full, charge to full, and EVs are not worth it because they're doing it wrong.
Yeah, So that's why we're having this show, right? So number one, charging capacity, your car's charging capability. Look for the charger with the best rates. Easiest is stay away from Shell. Number 3 is don't charge to the full capacity. And how to do that is you can actually set within your car's what's it called? That settings, right? You can set it to charge DC up to whatever
level you want. Anyways, just stop charging when you hit the limit.
Up to whatever state of charge you want. It is a new way of using a car because I had that problem when I started using EVs because I have this habit of charging things to the fullest. Like I like charging stuff to 100% because then it takes longer to draw down and I can use it more without plugging in. For EVs, it's a bit different because while we think the concept is the same, it's electrons and it's electric and we plug it in to charge, the usage is different because the scale of it, like the battery of a electric vehicle is probably like 1,000 times more than a phone or even a laptop. So the way that the battery is being managed is completely different from a phone or a laptop. So it requires us to kind of like
Change our mindset.
change mindset and habit,
Yeah.
right?
And I always tell people, right, think of charging EVs like charging your smartphone. Like, for example, if a home charger is ideal, then that solves like 99% of problem. You leave you start the day with enough charge, like 80% charge.
Yeah.
You get on the day, and then like a smartphone, right? Let's say by the time evening, they say, oh, I need to go out to have a late night with my friends, whatever. And let's say you're low in battery.
Yeah.
So let's say you want to call a Grab or Uber, whatever, right? Okay, I want to make sure that you have enough battery to reach your home. So normally you just do a quick top up with your power bank. You're not going to wait there until it's charged 100%. Just charge, you know, let's say charge you like 20%. Okay, that's enough for me to call a Grab and then reach home. I can charge at home.
Yeah.
Same concept as well.
Yeah, it's basically trickle charge. Not just okay. Trickle charging is also not a good term. It's like you say lah, just touch and go. Just top it up and go. Top it up and go. Just to get you to the next destination. It trains you to be more efficient. For new owners, it allows you to be familiar with charging, using the charging equipment. Like DC charging is a bit different than just using AC charging, and it allows you to be familiar with chargers around your area.
Yep.
Obviously, there are tools that help you plan, but it's good to just have a mind map of where things are so that you are all right in general. It does get a bit of getting used to. I mean, in the first few maybe months especially when you're traveling long distance, because you can't assume that every rest stop there is a charger.
Yeah, it's not as visible as petrol stations.
Yeah,
there's no like a huge sign. Oh, EV charger is. You need to know where the chargers are.
Yeah,
there's a bit of research you need to
do. The facility is getting better. There's more and more chargers now, and I think almost every day there's a new charger, or every week there's a new charger
being deployed,
popping up somewhere.
Yep.
So that's great. And yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Is there anything you want to add?
Also, another thing I want to say is that don't just look for DC chargers, because sometimes you don't really need DC fast charging.
Yes.
Sometimes good AC charging is good enough. Because for example, if you travel long distance, right, you're definitely not going to be on the road all the time. When you reach destination, where will you be? You're going to be at the hotel. You're going to be at a shopping mall. You're going to be at a makan place or tourist attraction. So the places where you're not using your car, when the car is being parked, why not use that time to charge your car? You can just charge like 2 hours in the mall. That's more than enough, actually, 3 hours charge. Because I do that all the time, because I don't even have a home charger. So I just do quick top-ups for like 2 hours, 3 hours whenever I stop anywhere that has a charger.
Yeah.
So, and also AC charging is much cheaper. You probably pay less than 10 ringgit for like 2 hours of charging. Yeah. And that's significantly cheaper and more cost effective than DC fast charger, because DC fast charger, use it only when you only have a short time to spare for charging.
Yep.
You're going to leave your car for a couple hours, look for AC charging. Plan it out. In fact, if you plan for long distance trips, why not plan to stay at hotels with EV charging facility? And I'm sure that a lot of hotels out there, with the growing trend of EVs, they will want to have EV chargers there as well. So that will be a huge transition shift on the way we use EVs.
Yeah, I think that's a great example, because that made me realize, right, the reason why people top up their fuel tanks to full is because we're so used to it. But actually, if you think about it now, topping up your fuel is really inconvenient.
You waste time.
You got to go to the petrol station. You gotta pay. If you don't have a card, you gotta go to the counter. You gotta line up, blah blah blah. Then you gotta deal with the fuel, with the mess and everything. So you're like, okay, since I'm here, might as well just top it up so I maximize the time I need to go to a petrol station.
And then they always say that for EV charging long distance, you need queue. Well, if you go to a rest stop during festive season, there's always a queue at the petrol station anyway.
Confirm got queue. Yeah. Confirm. The toilet got queue, the kedai runcit got queue, the petrol pump got queue, everything got queue.
Yeah, and the difference is with EV chargers, right? It's like petrol station, you cannot just install petrol station anyway.
Yeah.
You can't install petrol station in the house, you cannot put it in the mall, you cannot just put it in the hotel.
Yeah.
But for EV charging, as long as there's a power outlet, it's possible to put charger, at least AC. So there's a higher chance that there will be more EV chargers out there more than petrol station. I think that's going to be the possible in the future.
Yeah, and that's what I wanted to point out also, is that unlike petrol cars and petrol stations, you have the opportunity to charge basically anywhere.
Yes.
And that's the reason why you need to swap your mindset a bit, and instead of charging it to full, I just top it up until I find the next charger.
Yep.
And then just plug it in. Whether it's fast or slow, at least I can top up my car.
Yep.
And it's easy because I just leave it there, and by the time I come back from my makan or my shopping, it's done.
Yeah, but of course the reality check is that we do a bit of reality check. Of course, the situation right now is far from ideal. I think we still need more chargers because as much as we see a lot of new chargers being deployed along the North Side Highway, most of them are like one charger, two chargers. And of course, some people do raise valid concerns. What if during festive season there's 10 people want to charge? It's only one charger there. It's not enough. So there's still a need of massive EV charging hubs, which I think a lot of companies are trying to develop that as well. And I think the future will be something similar to what we've seen in like US with the Tesla superchargers, or even like China. Recently, Shell and also BYD, they just launched the world's biggest EV charging hub. They have like 258 stalls with DC charging up to 250 kilowatts.
Wow, that's crazy, man.
That's crazy because imagine because it's for airport, right? So I can assume that the e-hailing and taxi drivers, right, if you want to pick up passengers or drop off, they just do a quick charge and you just go plug the car in, go to the Shell convenience store, go to a toilet, have a break, and by then your car has enough charge for the whole trip.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that you pointed that out, right? Because that kind of like gives us an example of how a lot of the charging operators in Malaysia are approaching charging. It's sporadic. It's like wherever somebody wants a charger, okay, I'll just plug it in there because people just want the quantity, but they don't think about the usability. So, for example, if a place only has like 2 chargers, the likelihood of those 2 chargers being used is higher because there are more electric vehicles in Malaysia now.
Yeah.
So minimum maybe 4 chargers. The more better, because when you arrive there, you don't know because maybe they don't have the live updates and you don't know whether it's being utilized or is broken down or what. So it's better that way. So maybe that's another discussion. Okay, so I hope we've provided you with some useful info on how charging curve work and on how DC charging works and how to charge your car using DC charger. I guess my final question to you, Alex, is which car has the best charging curve?
I think we already mentioned this already. Basically, if effectively cars that with end-rover architecture. So in Malaysia, you only have a few options right now. You have the Hyundai and Kias, the new ones, based on end-rover architecture. Of course, not the Niro or the Konas. You also have the Porsche Taycan, that's a bit atas already. You also have Audi e-tron GT, that's quite atas already. So this
and
also,
the Lotus.
And Lotus Electric.
And the Rolls-Royce.
Rolls-Royce?
Spectre. Is it 800?
I don't think so. I think it's still 400 volt.
wow.
Yeah, because I think it's using the same battery as the BMW i7. Yeah, but of course, if you buy a Rolls-Royce, you're not going to worry about charging. Your butler is going to handle that for you.
Yeah. Your butler is going to drive a mobile charger.
Yes.
and plug it in.
Yeah, because you just need the Rolls-Royce just to drive to your private jet and that's it. Yeah, so I would say that if you want the fastest charging possible, look for cars for end-rover architecture. So the Hyundai, Kias, the Audis, and Lotus, and the Porsche Taycans.
I think you're being too kind. I'll be direct and blunt, but okay, I'm not trying to be biased, but this is real world experience. We've tested a lot of cars. We're gonna probably test the e-tron soon. And you've reviewed a lot of the charging curves and all that, right? And even on paper, I have to say, the rate that the eGMP, the Hyundais and Kias, the new one, the Ioniq 5, Ioniq 6, EV6, the way that they can fill up their batteries is astonishingly fast. To a point where I get anxious, when I plug in a really fast DC charger and I need to go to the toilet. I'm like, okay, I gotta go really quick because I don't want to come back and the thing is already fully charged because I don't want to look like somebody hoarding the charging point,
Yeah, such a complaint. It's too fast. In fact, even you don't need the 350 kilowatt charger. In fact, even the Gentari charging hub at IATAM, even though it's 180 kilowatt charger, it took 10 to 80% charge for the Ioniq 6. It took about 20 minutes. It's just 2 minutes longer than 350 kilowatt. So it's still fast because, like we mentioned, it can sustain the high charging rate for a long time.
Okay, so that's pretty much it. So if you guys have any questions, put them in the comment section below. If you're listening to us on podcast, if you want to listen to us on podcast, we are available on podcast. You can search for us, Sorry Chinchao, Let's Talk About, and we are available there. If you're listening to us on podcast, you like the show, share it with your friends and family. Give us a 5-star rating and a review because it helps the show grow. If you're watching us on YouTube, give us a thumbs up if you like the show. drop us a comment. We'd like to hear from you if you have any questions about EV or anything about technology. If you have, what do you think? If you own an EV and you are fast charging, what are your thoughts? What is your experience? Let us know. We would like to find out as well. You can also drop a voice note
At let's talk about at soyachincha.com.
Yeah, we'd love to hear from you as well. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to give us a thumbs up. And don't forget to comment. And yeah, this is me, Amin.
And this is Alex.
Catch you guys later.
Bye.